Hey, tonight, we're going somewhere cold. A place where winter doesn't just bite, it settles in, heavy and unmoving, for months. You're about to live through it the way a medieval peasant would. No central heating, no hot chocolate, no wool socks fresh from the dryer. Just you, your family, and whatever you can cling to until spring stirs again. Before we begin, go ahead and make yourself comfortable. Pull a blanket around your shoulders. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. If you enjoy these quiet little journeys we take together, you can leave a like to let me know, and subscribe if you'd like to come along for more. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where in the world you're watching from, and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see how far and wide these moments travel. Now, let's step back in time. Because, as of this moment, you've just woken up in the year 1347. In the heart of a brutal winter, you open your eyes to darkness, not the modern kind. There's no faint blue glow from streetlights through curtains. This is deep, heavy blackness, broken only by the dull orange ember of last night's fire, still clinging to life in the hearth. The air is sharp and dry, and even from across the room hints the thin thread of warmth drifting from those fading coals. You lie on a straw mattress that crackles when you shift. The straw is uneven, some stalks soft and flattened from months of use, others still stiff enough to poke through the worn fabric. Over you rests a coarse wool blanket, heavy from the smoke and grease of many months without washing. It smells faintly of sheep and hearth fire, and though it scratches your skin, it's the closest thing you have to comfort. You pull your knees up tighter toward your chest. The cold outside the blanket is not something you want to invite in. Frost has pushed its way into the corners of the hut overnight, and your breath curls in the air like pale ghosts before fading into the dimness. From the far side of the room comes the low rustle of movement, your family stirring. You all share this one small wooden hut. The walls are rough planks, fitted loosely enough that daylight and drafts can slip through. A thatch roof hangs low above you, patched in places where the wind tried to tear it away last autumn. The goats in the corner shift on their hooves, stamping lightly. They puff warm steam into the air, their dark eyes catching the firelight. They are more than just animals here. They are warmth, milk, and a form of security. Without them, your survival would be far more fragile. You push the blanket aside and swing your legs over the side of the bed. Your bare feet meet the frozen boards and you wince at the shock. Moving quickly, you cross to the hearth and crouch low. The embers need coaxing. Too much haste, and you'll smother them. Too little, and they'll fade entirely. You layer dry twigs over the glow, careful, patient. The twigs crack, hiss, and then sigh into flame. You feel the heat on your face, faint but growing. It's not comfort, not yet, only the first small victory of the day. Breakfast is nothing lavish, yesterday's bread, baked in the village's shared oven. It's hard now, the crust thick as wood. You break it with effort, the sound sharp in the quiet. A pot of thin pottage waits by the fire, simmering gently. It's made of dried peas, a few shreds of barley, and the faintest memory of salted pork. Just a thin strip you've been reusing for weeks to flavor the broth. You tear a piece of bread, dip it into the bowl, and let the steam brush your face before taking a bite. The warmth spreads slowly down your throat. You eat without hurry, each mouthful is meant to last, to be savored. In winter, food is both fuel and reassurance. The water jug by the door is frozen. You tip it slightly, and a dull block of ice shifts inside. No matter. You know you'll have to fetch fresh water later. Breaking through the ice at the stream, it's another small chore, another piece of the day's survival. You glance at the sacks in the corner. Grain, beans, dried roots. They're lighter now than they were a month ago. Every meal is measured. Eat freely now, and the spring planting will arrive before you do. Outside, the air is bright but merciless. The skies are pale, washed out blue, the kind that offers no warmth at all. The fields stretch out under a layer of frost, their lines of stubble brittle and still. Your boots crunch on the frozen earth as you walk toward the edge of the village. The houses here look much like yours, low, wood and thatch, smoke curling thinly from their chimneys. Most doors remain closed. No one lingers outside longer than necessary. A neighbor passes you, head bent against the wind, carrying a bundle of firewood bound with rough rope. You nod in greeting words would freeze in the air before they reach their mark. By the time you return to your hut, the fire is stronger. The goats are restless, their hooves shuffling on the packed dirt floor. You spread fresh straw for them, listening to the small sounds they make, soft chewing, the occasional snorts. They give more than they take, but they, too, depend on your care. The rest of the morning will be filled with small tasks: mending a torn tunic, patching the door frame, checking the roof for leaks where snowmelt might find its way inside. Winter work is never heavy all at once. It's a slow, constant tending, the way one keeps a flame alive, not with great logs, but with a steady offering of kindling. By midday, the light is already beginning to soften. The sun in winter never climbs high, and the day is brief. You sit close to the hearth, feeling the fire's heat finally begin to sink into your bones. Outside, the wind hums low, weaving between the houses, carrying with it the smell of wood smoke from a dozen fires. For now, you are fed, you are warm enough. And in a season like this, that is all you dare ask for. The air outside your hut is sharp and still, the kind of cold that wraps itself around you and settles deep in your bones. The sun has barely begun its slow climb, its pale light spilling across the hard crust of snow. Each step crunches softly beneath your boots, and the sound feels loud in the silence of morning. The fire you coaxed to life earlier is burning steadily now, but the work of the day is waiting, patient and endless. You begin with the animals, for they depend on you as much as you depend on them. The goat bleats in greeting, her breath curling into the frigid air, and you scatter a small handful of grain into her trough. She eats slowly, lips moving in a rhythmic, almost soothing pattern. The chickens shift and cluck from within their enclosure. Their water is frozen solid, a pale disc of ice that you crack with a careful strike of your hand axe. The sound echoes in the quiet, a sharp reminder of just how deep the cold runs. You refill the trough with fresh water, watching it steam faintly against the winter air. Fetching wood comes next. The forest is a short walk from the hut, but in the biting cold, it feels longer. You keep your cloak drawn tightly around you, your breath creating a small cloud that follows you between the bare trees. The ground is uneven, hidden beneath snow, and you tread carefully, knowing one misstep could cost you dearly in the unforgiving season. You find the stacked logs you cut and split weeks ago, their edges rough and dark against the snow. You carry what you can, the weight dragging at your arms, your fingers stinging in your gloves. Back at the hut, you lay the logs beside the door, close enough to reach when the next storm comes. The work is simple but steady, each task flowing into the next without question. You do not need to think about what to do, for these actions are ingrained in you, learned over years of surviving winter. Feed the animals, break the ice, gather the wood, tend the fire. The rhythm is slow, measured, and necessary, the way your heart beats without asking permission. By mid-morning, the frost has not softened. The sun is brighter now, but it offers little warmth. You take one last walk around the small yard, checking the fences for breaks and the walls for cracks. The wind will find any weakness, and in winter, you cannot allow a way in. When you return inside, your breath is a little heavier, your fingers tingling from the chill. The fire greets you with a hiss and a glow. The goat shifts softly in the corner, and the faint smell of wood smoke clings to the air. You sit for a moment, hands close to the flames, listening to the stillness. The day's work is far from over, but for now, you have done what was needed. The sun hangs low in the sky, pale and weak, offering little warmth. You step outside once again, boots crunching over hardened snow and frozen mud. The village lies quiet, blanketed in white, each roof capped with ice, each path glinting like glass under the faint light. The cold is relentless, but it is not cruel. It simply exists, indifferent, demanding respect and care from anyone who ventures out into its grip. Your hands, encased in rough wool gloves, grip the handle of a spade. Today's task is simple yet vital, tending the frozen fields, preparing what can be prepared, and ensuring that the ground will yield life once spring arrives. Even in winter, survival depends on work, steady and precise. The first steps into the fields remind you of the year's passage. Frosted stalks of last season's grain crunch beneath your boots, brittle and dry. The soil is hard, unyielding, and frozen solid. You press your spade lightly against it, testing for areas where frost has cracked the earth, small fractures that, when spring comes, will allow life to break through more easily. It is meticulous work, slow and careful, but each small observation matters. Snowdrifts hang in shallow hollows, and you brush them aside to inspect the soil beneath. A few seeds remain from last autumn, tiny miracles against the harsh cold. You make mental notes. This area will need replanting. That patch may have preserved enough to feed a handful of chickens. In winter, knowledge is as valuable as food. Each detail you remember, each careful measurement of the land, ensures survival. The wind picks up, carrying with it a hollow whistle that threads between the stalks. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the bite of the cold against your cheeks. Your breath forms thin clouds, rising and dissolving before you. The sun is lower now, and the shadows stretch long across the field. You pause for a moment, letting the quiet wash over you. It is not silence, not quite, but a subdued rhythm, punctuated by the occasional caw of a distant crow or the rustle of a small animal beneath the snow. The monotony is meditative, almost comforting in its consistency. You dig, press, inspect, and step back to consider the land from every angle. Each action is small, but together they form a dance of preparation, an assurance that when warmth returns, life will follow. You notice footprints in the snow, perhaps the neighbor's dog, perhaps a wandering fox. You follow them briefly, your mind alert but calm. Every creature in winter is searching, surviving, just as you are. There is a quiet companionship, this shared struggle, an unspoken understanding that life continues even under the harshest conditions. Returning to your work, you focus on the furrows, the tiny ridges and depressions that will catch spring's rain and nurture the seeds. Frost has lifted slightly in some areas, exposing dark, damp soil beneath. You make careful notes in your mind, where to plant, where to sow, where the animals can graze once the ice finally melts. It is work that requires patience, precision, and attention to the smallest details, all under the indifferent eye of winter. By mid-morning, your fingers ache from gripping tools, and your boots feel heavier with the frozen weight of the snow. You take a moment to rest, leaning against the spade, letting the cold wind press against your back. The world is quiet here, apart from the occasional bird call or the whisper of ice shifting under the sun. You inhale deeply, savoring the crisp air, the subtle smells of wood smoke drifting from the village, the faint metallic tang of frozen earth. Even in hardship, there is beauty. Even in endless cold, there are moments that warm the spirit. The sight of frost crystals clinging to bare branches, the soft white blanket covering the land, the delicate footprints of creatures that have come and gone. These small observations remind you that life, even in its harshest form, continues. You bend again to the soil, loosening it where possible, brushing away the last stubborn patches of frost. Each movement is deliberate, each action part of a rhythm you have known all your life. Time seems to stretch, elongated by the cold and the steady pace of your work. It is exhausting, yes, but grounding. Winter is a teacher, harsh yet honest, reminding you of limits while also revealing resilience. The village beyond the fields looks quiet, almost serene. Smoke rises from chimneys in thin spirals, and you imagine your neighbors, each tending to their own animals, their own fires, their own chores. There is a collective patience here, a shared endurance that binds everyone together. Though you face the cold alone now, you are not entirely solitary. Each life is interwoven with another, a quiet community of survival. By noon, you return to the hut, boots heavy with frozen mud and snow, body aching but heart steady. You slide open the door and are greeted by warmth immediately, a welcome contrast to the frozen expanse outside. The goats stir, the chickens cluck softly, and the fire hisses at the momentary draft. You set down your tools, brush off your cloak, and take a moment to simply stand by the hearth, letting its heat sink into your bones. Your midday meal is simple, a handful of barley porridge, thickened with a few dried roots, and a slice of bread softened by the fire. You eat slowly, each bite grounding you, each sip warming your chest. Outside, the wind continues its relentless song, but inside, there is safety, sustenance, and a momentary reprieve from the cold. After eating, you step outside once more, not to work, but to observe. The light has changed, shadows stretch long and pale, painting the village in muted shades of grey and white. The fields glimmer under a thin crust of ice, delicate and fragile. You watch for signs of life, a small trail in the snow, a distant crow hopping from branch to branch, the subtle shift of clouds across the sky. Every observation, no matter how small, carries meaning. It is how you read the world, how you predict the movements of winter, how you ensure survival. The cold presses against your cheeks, your fingers, your toes. But each breath is deliberate, each movement measured. You understand the rhythm of the day, the requirements of life in a season that allows no shortcuts. You are attuned to it, aligned with it, and even in its harshness, there is a strange calm. As evening approaches, you return to the hut for the final chores of the day. You check the animals, add a final layer of straw to their bedding, stoke the fire, and ensure that doors and windows are secure against the encroaching frost. The wind outside is louder now, weaving around the hut and carrying the scent of frozen wood and distant smoke. Inside, the fire glows warmly, the animals settle, and you take a deep, slow breath. Winter is unrelenting, but you have endured it today. You have moved through the frozen fields, prepared what you could, and ensured the safety of your home. The cold is still there, waiting, but so are you, and tomorrow you will rise and repeat these careful, deliberate acts once again. The door closes behind you with a soft thud, sealing you away from the sharp wind and biting air outside. For a moment, you just stand there, letting the change settle over you. The world inside the hut is dim and warm, the fire's glow casting soft gold across the packed dirt floor. The scent of smoke greets you first, mingling with the faint smell of animals, dried herbs, and the earthy musk of old wood. It is a scent you have known all your life, familiar and constant, carrying both comfort and necessity. Your eyes adjust slowly to the shadows. The fire crackles, feeding on the last log you placed before heading out. Its heat rolls toward you, slow and steady, and you hold your hands out, palms forward, letting the warmth soak into stiff fingers. The tips still tingle from the cold, a prickling reminder of the hour spent outside. Around you, the hut is quiet except for the low murmur of the flames and the occasional shifting sound from the animals in their corner. The goat shifts her hooves against the straw, then settles again, curling into herself. The chickens, already roosting, murmur softly, feathers rustling as they resettle. You can see your own breath here in the far corner, but near the hearth, the air is heavy and warm. You unfasten your cloak slowly, shaking the clinging snow from its wool. It falls to the floor in small white clumps that begin to melt almost immediately, leaving dark spots in the dirt. The cloak is heavy with damp, so you hang it near the fire, where the heat will pull the moisture out by nightfall. Your boots follow, set beside the hard stones, so that they will be warm when morning comes. The hearth is more than just a source of warmth. It is the center of the home, the place where food is prepared, where water is boiled, where light is made in the long winter dark. Without it, the hut would be uninhabitable within hours. You kneel beside it, inspecting the fire carefully. The logs have burned down to red-orange coals, glowing like small suns under a dusting of ash. You take the poker, an iron rod blackened by years of use, and gently stir the embers until sparks jump upward, drifting into the chimney like fireflies. From the wood piles stacked against the far wall, you take another split log, dry and seasoned, and lay it carefully across the coals. You listen to it hiss and pop as the heat begins to wake it, the resin inside releasing its sharp, clean scent. The flames catch slowly, curling around the edges before pulling inward, until the log is embraced fully by fire. You set a small iron pot on the edge of the hearth, half filled with water drawn from the bucket earlier in the day. The water is cold enough to make your fingertips ache when you dip them into measure, a reminder that the barrel outside has likely frozen again by now. The pot settles into place, and soon thin ribbons of steam begin to rise. From a shelf above the hearth, you take a small linen pouch of dried peas, another of barley, and a third filled with thinly sliced dried carrots. These are the stores you set aside in autumn, carefully measured, so that each week of winter is accounted for. You add a handful of each to the pot, listening to the small splash as they fall in. The smell begins to shift slowly as the steam thickens, changing from the clean, neutral scent of boiling water to something richer, something that speaks of nourishment. In the stillness, you take a moment to look around the hut. The walls are rough, made from wooden planks daubed with a mixture of clay, straw, and mud to keep the wind from seeping through. In some places, the daub has cracked, and you have filled the gaps with more straw, pressed tightly into the seams. A small wooden chest sits near the far wall, holding the few clothes not in use, and beside it, a low table built from rough hewn boards. On the table lies a wooden bowl, a small knife, and a lump of coarse salt wrapped in cloth. Above the hearth, bundles of dried herbs hang from the rafters, their stems brittle, their leaves faded but still fragrant when touched. Sage, marjoram, and thyme, gathered in summer when the air was warm and the fields were green. Their scents are faint but soothing, and when the pot is nearly ready, you will add a pinch to the stew, not just for flavor, but because such herbs are said to keep the body strong against winter's sickness. Outside, the wind rattles against the walls, a low and constant pressure that makes the hut creak softly. You hear it, but feel no fear of it. The walls have stood against worse, and the fire burns bright. Still, you pull the blanket from your bed and drape it around your shoulders as you work, feeling the wool's rough texture against your skin. As the pot simmers, you settle onto the low stool near the fire. The heat reaches your legs and chest, and you allow yourself a slow breath, the kind that releases the tension in your shoulders. The light flickers across the walls, casting long, shifting shadows. It is not bright, but it is enough. In winter, light is a treasure, and every flicker feels like a gift. When the stew is nearly done, you add a small slice of dried meat, more for its salt than for its substance. The smell deepens, filling the hut with a warm, savory aroma that makes your stomach tighten in anticipation. You stir it slowly, watching the steam curl upward into the dim air. This is a meal meant to last the night. You will eat half now, the rest in the morning, and it will keep you steady through another day of work. You ladle it into a wooden bowl, the rough grain of the wood warm against your hands, and take the first careful sip. The broth is thin but rich, flavored by the meat and herbs, and it spreads warmth through your chest. The barley has softened, the peas have burst, and the carrots, though shriveled from drying, still hold a faint sweetness. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, your mind wandering as you stare into the fire. You think of the summer fields, green and alive, and the work of planting and harvesting. You think of autumn's chill, when the last sheaves of grain were tied and stacked, and of the first frost that painted the ground white. You think of the work yet to come, and of the seasons that will follow. This hut, small as it is, holds the story of your survival. Every board, every stone, every piece of cloth has been placed here with purpose. The tools by the door, the bundles of herbs, the wood pile, all a part of a quiet system that carries you from one day to the next. You do not question it, you simply live it. When the bowl is empty, you set it aside and tend to the fire once more. You add another log, watching as the flames climb and settle. The wind outside is stronger now, its song a low, steady howl, but inside, the heat grows, the light flickers, and the air is heavy with the smell of wood smoke and simmering stew. The animals are quiet now, their breathing soft and steady. You check their straw, adding a little more for warmth, and ensure their water is not frozen. These small actions, repeated every night, mean the difference between health and hardship. Finally, you return to your bed, a simple frame of rough wood, topped with straw and covered in wool. You wrap yourself tightly, turning so that your face is toward the fire. The light dances across your closed eyelids, and the crackle of the logs becomes the only sound you truly hear. The wind may rage outside, but here, in the glow of the hearth, you are still, safe, and warm. Tomorrow will come, as it always does, and the work will begin again. But for now, you drift in that quiet space between wakefulness and sleep, where the world narrows to the gentle rhythm of your own breathing and the steady heartbeat of the fire. The fire burns low now, casting a softer light that clings to the walls in trembling patches. Outside, the wind has settled into a steady sigh, as though the night itself has grown tired. You lie still beneath the heavy wool blanket, your eyes half closed, watching the last few sparks drift upward from the hearth. The warmth is enough to keep the bite of the air at bay, but only if you stay close. In winter, heat is not something you take for granted. It is something you guard, something you keep like a secret. The hut is quieter than the world outside, yet not silent. The goat shifts again, her breathing deep and even, a soft reminder that life continues in the dark. The chickens murmur in their sleep, their heads tucked under their wings. Somewhere near the door, a mouse rustles through a crack in the wall, searching for crumbs from the day's bread. You hear it faintly, but feel no need to chase it away. It, too, is a creature just trying to see the winter through. The night stretches ahead, longer than the day you have just left behind. In these months, darkness seems to claim more hours than light. The sun lingers low in the sky even at its peak, and by the time you finish the evening meal, it is already gone. What comes after is the slow passage of the winter night, an expanse of hours that can feel endless if you let them. You rise from the bed to tend the fire once more, adding a smaller log this time, one that will catch quickly and burn steadily until morning. The wood is precious, and every log must be chosen carefully. Too large, and it will burn too hot and too fast, wasting its strength. Too small, and it will fade before the night is over, leaving you to wake in the cold. You choose the middle path, laying the log gently on the embers and watching as they glow brighter in greeting. The smell of smoke curls into the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of the dried herbs hanging above. It is a scent you will carry in your hair, your clothes, your skin. Even in summer, when the air is fresh and the fields are green, that scent will remain with you, a reminder of winter's past. You sit on the low stool again, drawing the blanket around your shoulders. In the firelight, you take up your small knife and a strip of leather you have been working for several evenings now. Winter nights are for tasks that require stillness and patience, the sort of quiet work that keeps your hands busy while your mind drifts. You smooth the leather between your fingers, feeling its cool surface, and begin to scrape away the rough edges with slow, careful movements. The rhythm is steady, almost hypnotic. The knife glides, the leather shifts, the fire crackles. You can hear the wind pressing against the walls, but it no longer feels threatening. It is simply there, a part of the night, as constant as the stars you cannot see beyond the thick cloud cover. When your hands grow tired, you set the leather aside and reach for the wooden cup near the hearth. Inside is a small measure of warmed ale, brewed from the barley stored in the chest. It is not strong, not meant for indulgence, but it carries a sweetness and a faint warmth that spreads through you with each sip. You drink slowly, letting the taste linger on your tongue. Time moves differently in winter nights. The hours do not rush, they unfold gently, each one stretching into the next. You mark their passing not by the clock, but by the needs of the fire, the shift of the animals in their rest, the settling of the woodpile as the logs dry and crack. You know that somewhere in the dark beyond the door, snow may be falling again, blanketing the ground in silence. You think of the village now, scattered as it is across the fields and lanes. In the great hall, the Lord's fire will be roaring, tended by many hands. In the homes of other peasants like yourself, smaller fires will burn low, each one guarded through the night. The village sleeps, but it is a light sleep, the kind that listens for trouble. Wolves are rare, but not unheard of, and hunger drives even the shyest creatures to boldness in the depths of winter. The knife and leather call you back, and you take them up again. Your movements are slower now, not from fatigue, but from a sense of quiet satisfaction. The work does not need to be finished tonight. In winter, there is time. You will sew the leather into something useful before the snow melts, perhaps a strap for a pack or a sheath for a tool. After a time, you set the work aside entirely and lie back down, turning so that you can watch the fire. The flames have settled into a steady glow, casting a soft red light that does not reach far into the corners of the hut. You close your eyes and let the warmth wash over you, letting the sounds of the night fade into the distance. Sleep comes in small pieces in winter. You drift in and out, waking to feed the fire, then slipping back into dreams. The dreams are vivid, shaped by the cold and the closeness of the hut. You see green fields, warm sunlight, rivers running full with melted snow. You see the faces of those you have known, some still here, others long gone. The dreams leave no clear path, only a soft haze that lingers when you open your eyes. When you wake next, the fire has dimmed, but the coals still glow. You add a small branch, just enough to keep the warmth alive until morning. The air feels colder now, and you pull the blanket tighter. The animals are still, the wind has quieted, and the world outside the hut feels impossibly far away. The night is deep now, the kind of darkness that feels like it has weight. Yet here, in the circle of light and heat, you are safe. You listen to your own breathing, steady and calm, and to the faint, steady heartbeat of the fire. You think, not for the first time, of how your life is measured in these small moments. A log placed just right, a blanket pulled close, a bowl of hot stew shared in the dim light. Survival is not always grand or heroic. Often, it is found in the quiet choices made hour by hour, night by night. By the time the first pale light of dawn begins to show, you will have tended the fire a dozen times. You will rise, stretch, and step into another day of winter. But for now, you let the night hold you, letting your thoughts drift with the slow rise and fall of the flames. The long winter nights may be endless, but they are also a kind of shelter, a place where time pauses and the world feels very small, very close, and very warm. The first light of day is not a sudden thing in winter. It comes slowly, a faint silver glow that seeps into the cracks of the world before the sun dares to rise. Inside the hut, the air feels sharper, a crispness that catches in your throat when you breathe. You lie still for a moment, feeling the weight of the wool blanket across your chest, and listening to the gentle crackle of the coals in the hearth. You have been awake for some time, drifting in that quiet space between sleep and rising, waiting for the light to tell you it is time. In summer, the dawn comes early, spilling warmth and color into the sky before the rooster has time to stir. But in the heart of winter, the morning lingers in the shadows, hesitant, as though it knows what awaits beyond the horizon is still bitterly cold. You turn beneath the blanket and look toward the fire. The embers glow like a cluster of tiny stars, deep and steady. You know they will not last much longer without feeding. With a quiet sigh, you push the blanket aside and step onto the packed earth floor. The chill rushes up through your feet, biting at your skin until you slip into your worn boots. The leather is stiff in the cold, but it will soften with movement. The woodpile is low now, and the logs stacked near the hearth are frosted at their ends, where the damp from outside clings to them. You choose two, placing them carefully on the coals, and lean close to coax the flames into life. The heat rises slowly, touching your face in gentle waves. The light grows a little brighter in the hut, flickering against the beams overhead. Behind you, the goat stirs, stretching her legs before settling again. She will need feeding soon. The chickens shift as well, their quiet murmurs beginning to fill the still air. They too are waiting for the day to begin. You glance toward the door, knowing what awaits beyond it. The cold will be sharp, and the snow deep, but the animals must be tended to, the paths to the well cleared, the day's work begun. Before stepping outside, you pull your wool cloak around your shoulders, fastening it at your throat with a small wooden pin. The fabric is heavy, its weight familiar, the scent of smoke and winter woven deep into its fibers. You take one last look at the hearth, making sure the fire will hold while you are gone, and then lift the latch on the door. The cold rushes in at once, wrapping itself around you in a breathless embrace. Your first step sinks into snow that is soft on the surface, but hard beneath, each footprint marked with a crisp edge. The air is so clear it feels like it could shatter, each breath a small cloud drifting away behind you. The village is quiet, as though it too is still waking. Smoke rises from a few chimneys, curling into the pale sky. The sound of a rooster calling from somewhere down the lane cuts through the stillness, its echo carried on the cold air. You pass the hut of your nearest neighbor, where a thin figure is already out with a wooden pail, heading toward the well. You lift a hand in greeting, and they nod in return before hurrying on. Your path takes you first to the goat's pen. The snow clings to the rough wooden rails, glittering faintly in the growing light. You clear a small space inside, spreading fresh straw for her to stand on, and fill the trough with water from the bucket you carried from the hearth. The steam rises as the warm water meets the cold air, a brief cloud that disappears almost instantly. She drinks eagerly, her breath frosting in the space between you. Next, you make your way to the small coop tucked against the side of the hut. The chickens greet you with soft clucks and the rustle of wings, their feathers puffed out against the cold. You scatter a handful of grain on the floor, watching as they peck and scratch in the straw. One of them has laid an egg, a small brown shell still warm from her body. You cradle it in your hand for a moment, feeling the heat seep into your fingers before tucking it into your cloak. The well is the final task of the morning's round. The snow along the path is packed from many feet, but still slick beneath your boots. The rope is stiff with cold, the bucket's handle biting into your hand as you lower it down into the dark. The sound of it breaking the water surface is loud in the stillness. When you draw it up again, the water is shockingly cold, the kind that numbs your skin in an instant. You fill your pail carefully, knowing that each drop will be needed before the day is through. By the time you return to the hut, the light has grown stronger, though the sun itself is still hidden behind a low line of clouds. The fire greets you with its familiar warmth, a soft relief after the sting of the morning air. You set the pail near the hearth, remove your boots, and hang your cloak where it can dry from the damp of snow. Breakfast is simple, as it always is in winter. You take a small portion of bread from the shelf, breaking it into thick pieces. A shallow bowl of broth from last night's stew sits on the hearthstone, still warm from the fire. You add the bread to it, letting it soften, and eat slowly, savoring the way the warmth spreads through your body. The egg you found in the coop rests beside you, its shell cooling now, soon to be cooked in the pan for the midday meal. As you eat, you glance toward the small window, little more than a square opening covered with oiled cloth to keep out the worst of the wind. Beyond it, the snow still falls, fine and drifting, each flake catching the light as it turns. You know that the day will be quiet, much like the one before, and the one before that. In winter, the work is steady but unhurried, the rhythm set by the cold and the needs of the season. You finish your meal and sit for a while longer, hands wrapped around the wooden bowl, watching the flames move in the hearth. The warmth, the light, The sounds of the animals settling again, these are the small things that carry you through the long season. Outside, the day has begun, but here inside, it feels as though time is moving more slowly, each moment lingering before giving way to the next. The hours after breakfast are for work, and in winter, work is both lighter and heavier all at once. There are fewer crops to tend, no fields demanding the long, back-breaking hours of harvest, yet the tasks that remain are the kind that never truly end. The cold makes each movement slower, the snow makes each step more deliberate, and even the smallest chore demands more of you than it would in warmer seasons. You begin by checking the woodpile again. The stack outside the hut is smaller than you would like. The logs frosted at the edges, their grain pale against the white of the snow. Firewood is life in winter, as essential as bread or water. Without it, the nights would be unbearable, and the days would be nothing but a struggle to keep the chill from your bones. You take your axe from its resting place beside the door. The handle is smooth from years of use, the wood worn to fit the curve of your hand. Out beyond the edge of the village, there is a stand of trees, bare and skeletal against the pale sky. The snow here is deeper, and the wind sharper, carrying with it the faint sound of crows in the distance. You find a fallen branch first, its weight already lessened by the dry air. You chop it into smaller lengths, the sound of the axe striking wood ringing out in the quiet. Each blow sends a dull vibration through your arms, the cold making the wood splinter cleanly. After a time, your breath comes heavier, curling in front of you in small clouds. You pause to lean on the axe, scanning the trees for more fallen limbs. Gathering firewood is as much about patience as strength. You choose carefully, knowing the greenwood will smoke and spit in the hearth, and that seasoned logs are worth the effort of carrying them home. You make several trips back to the hut, stacking the logs neatly against the wall, brushing snow from your cloak each time you step inside. With the wood secured for now, you turn your attention to the tools. Winter is the time for mending and preparing, when the fields lie dormant and the hands that would sow and harvest turn instead to the quieter work of repair. The sickle, the hoe, the wooden rake all are checked for cracks in their handles, for rust along their metal edges. You sit by the hearth, the tools spread before you, and work slowly, the smell of smoke and oil mixing in the air. The axe blade is sharpened first, the scrape of the whetstone steady and rhythmic. The sound fills the small space, each pass smoothing the edge a little more. You wipe the blade clean, hold it to the light from the fire, and set it aside. The wooden handles are rubbed with oil to keep them from drying and splitting in the cold. Your fingers work the oil into the grain, feeling the texture of the wood beneath your touch. These tools are as much a part of your survival as the fire or the food you eat, and each one is cared for as you would a trusted companion. Outside, the village has begun to stir more fully. The muffled sound of voices carries through the snow, along with the occasional bark of a dog. You pull on your boots and cloak again, deciding to see if your neighbors need any help. In winter, no one gets through the season alone. The work is shared, the burden split, and what you give will come back to you when you are the one in need. You walk the narrow path between huts, the snow creaking underfoot. At the far end of the lane, you find your neighbor Thomas struggling with the latch on his shed, the wood swollen from the damp. Together, you force it open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the smell of hay and old leather greets you. He's storing grain here, and the sacks need to be shifted so the colder air does not spoil them. The two of you work side by side, your breath clouding in the dim light, the sound of the sacks dragging across the floor loud in the stillness. When the task is done, He offers you a small wedge of cheese from his stores, a gift of thanks. You accept it with a nod, knowing it will be a welcome addition to the evening's meal. As you leave, he calls after you, promising to help mend your fence when the weather warms. These small exchanges keep the village strong, each act of kindness another thread in the web that binds you together. By midday, the light outside has grown softer again, the clouds thickening overhead. You return to the hut, where the fire still burns, though the logs have settled into glowing embers. You place a fresh log on the grate and watch as the flames catch, the dry wood popping softly in the heat. Lunch is simple, a piece of bread with the cheese from Thomas, and a small cup of broth reheated from the morning. You eat slowly, your hands wrapped around the cup for warmth. Afterward, you take a moment to rest. In winter, the work is balanced with long stretches of stillness, times when you sit near the fire and simply let your body recover. Outside, the wind has picked up, the sound of it moving through the bare trees like a low whisper. You watch the snow shift and swirl through the small window, your mind drifting as the heat from the fire seeps into your bones. But the day is not done yet. There is grain to grind for flour, a slow, steady task that fills the afternoon hours. You bring the small hand mill closer to the hearth, the stone worn smooth from years of use. The grain is poured into the upper stone, and you turn the handle. The sound of the grinding a quiet, constant rhythm. The flour collects in the shallow bowl below, soft and pale, carrying with it the faint scent of the field where it grew. By the time the last of the grain is ground, the light outside is fading again. You gather the flour into a cloth, tying it closed, and set it on the shelf. It will be enough for bread tomorrow, perhaps with some left over for a simple porridge. You tidy the hearth, sweeping the ash into a small pile, and place another log on the fire for the evening. The air in the hut grows warmer, the light from the flames filling the space with a golden glow. The day's work leaves your body pleasantly heavy, your muscles tired but not strained. You sit for a while in the quiet, the sounds of the village faint beyond the walls, the fire a steady companion at your side, the cheese, the bread, the warmth, the knowledge that the woodpile is full. These are your small victories, the ones that carry you through the long nights of winter. The day's light lingers only briefly in winter. By the time the grain has been ground and the fire tended, the sky outside your window is already turning to that deep, muted blue that comes before nightfall. The snow reflects what little brightness remains, casting the village in a soft, even glow. Smoke rises from the chimneys in thin, wavering lines, each one carrying the scent of wood and peat into the still air. Evenings in winter are quieter than in summer, yet there is a subtle hum to them, a sense of shared endurance. The work of the day is done, but the night still needs filling, and people find comfort in gathering, in voices and laughter to push back against the long darkness. You pull your cloak from its peg, fastening it around your shoulders, and step outside. The air is sharp against your face, the snow beneath your boots compacted into a hard, uneven surface. Your breath fogs the air in front of you as you make your way along the narrow path toward the larger hut near the center of the village. This is where Robert and his wife, Agnes, live, and where, most evenings, a few of the neighbors gather to share news, songs, and whatever warmth there is to spare. As you approach, you see a faint golden light leaking from the small window, the glass clouded and wavy. The door opens before you knock, and you are greeted by the rush of warm air, thick with the smell of stewing vegetables and the faint tang of ale. Robert's smile is broad as he steps aside, waving you in. Inside, the room is dim but welcoming, the fire in the hearth throwing long shadows across the rough wooden walls. Several others are already here. Thomas sits on a bench near the fire, mending a strap of leather, his hands working steadily as he talks. Beside him, old Margaret is spinning wool, the soft, rhythmic pull of the spindle punctuating her words. A pair of children, their cheeks flushed from the cold, sit cross-legged on the floor, rolling small carved figures in a mock game of trade and barter. You find a seat near the hearth, your hands reaching instinctively toward the heat. Agnes moves about the room with practiced ease, ladling steaming broth into clay cups and passing them out. The broth is thin but fragrant, made from cabbage, onions, and a handful of dried herbs. When she places a cup in your hands, the warmth seeps into your fingers, and the first sip sends a slow comfort through your chest. The talk tonight is of the weather, of course. Robert swears the snow will let up within the week, that the clouds have shifted in just the way they do before a thaw. Margaret scarfs, shaking her head, and mutters that the cold will hold until Candlemas, as it always does. The debate is good-natured, filled with the kind of gentle teasing that long winters breed. You listen, content to let the voices fill the space, the sound of them a kind of music. Thomas mentions that a trader is expected in the next fortnight. If the roads are passable, his cart will carry salt, cloth, perhaps even a bit of honey. The thought of something so sweet is enough to make the children sit up straighter, their eyes wide. Someone jokes that the honey will be gone before the jar is opened, eaten in the dead of night by whoever gets to it first. Laughter ripples through the room, light and easy. When the cups are emptied, Robert pulls a small, battered fiddle from a shelf. The wood is scratched and worn, but the strings hold, and soon the room is filled with the thin, bright sound of a tune you have heard since childhood. It is a simple melody, one that calls to mind the turning of the seasons, the promise of spring's return. Agnes hums along as she moves about, tidying bowls and cups, her voice soft but steady. Margaret tells a story next, her voice low and deliberate. It is one of the old tales of a farmer who tricked the winter wind into sleeping, only to wake it too soon. The children listen with wide eyes, leaning closer to catch each word. Even the adults fall quiet, their faces lit by the fire, the flickering light catching in their eyes. When she reaches the end, there is a brief silence before Robert draws the bow across the strings again, the music lifting the mood back toward warmth and cheer. The night wears on like this, in the gentle rhythm of conversation, song, and shared stillness. The snow outside thickens again, muting the world beyond the walls. Every so often, the wind stirs, rattling the shutters, but inside the air is warm, the smells familiar, the company good. Eventually, you know it is time to leave. You pull your cloak tight, step back into the cold, and feel the difference immediately. The village is hushed now, the snow deepening in the lanes, the moon faint behind a veil of clouds. Your boots crunch softly as you make your way home, each step measured. The hut greets you with the faint glow of embers in the hearth. You place another log on the fire, coaxing the flames back to life, and shed your cloak. The air inside slowly warms again as you settle onto your straw bed, pulling the wool blanket close. The sounds of the gathering linger in your mind, the laughter, the fiddle's thin song, the soft murmur of voices. Outside, winter still has its hold on the land, the snow still falling. But here, in the quiet warmth of your home, you feel the weight of community, the way it holds you steady through the longest season. Sleep comes easily, the fire's glow painting the walls in shifting gold. The storm's distant whisper a lullaby for the night. Winter has a way of pressing on the chest, of slowing the breath, of reminding you just how fragile life can be. The cold creeps into bones and lingers there, a patient shadow, And when sickness comes, as it often does in the coldest months, it comes quickly and without mercy. It begins with a cough in the night, muffled at first, then sharper, shaking the straw mattress and drawing you from the edge of sleep. You open your eyes to the faint red glow of the embers, the air heavy and still. The sound comes again, from the far corner, where your neighbor, Edwin, has been staying these past days after his own hearth collapsed under the weight of snow. He is hunched beneath the wool blanket, his face pale even in the dim light, a sheen of sweat on his brow despite the chill. You rise quietly, feeling the bite of the cold on your bare feet, and move to the hearth. The fire needs feeding, so you take one of the larger logs from the stack, placing it carefully among the glowing coals. The flames catch slowly, licking at the wood, casting long shadows along the walls. Edwin stirs, his breath ragged. You know the signs your mother tended the sick in winters past, and you learned early how quickly a cough can turn to something worse. The hut's air is thick and close, carrying the faint, sour scent of illness. You pull on your cloak, the wool rough against your skin, and step out into the night. The snow crunches softly underfoot, the village silent, but for the distant moan of wind. You make your way to Margaret's hut. She is the village healer, a woman whose knowledge is as old as the hills themselves, passed from mother to daughter through generations. Her door is marked with dried herbs, bundles tied tight and hanging like small, withered charms against the cold. She answers your knock with a candle in hand, her face creased with sleep but alert. When you tell her of Edwin's cough, she nods without hesitation, setting the candle aside and wrapping herself in a thick shawl. From a low shelf, she takes a small wooden box, worn smooth from years of use, and tucks it under her arm. The walk back is slow, the snow deeper than before, the wind needling at your face. Inside your hut, Margaret wastes no time. She kneels beside Edwin, pressing the back of her hand to his forehead, then leaning close to listen to his breathing. Her eyes meet yours in a silent exchange. You both know it will be a long night. From her box, she takes dried leaves of coltsfoot, a small pouch of ground mustard seed, and a handful of thyme. She asks you to fetch water, and you step outside again, filling a clay jug with snow from the nearest drift. Back inside, the snow is set in a pot over the fire to melt, the steam carrying the sharp, green scent of the herbs as they are added. While the mixture simmers, Margaret prepares a poultice from mustard seed and coarse linen, explaining in her low, steady voice that the heat will draw the sickness from his chest. She speaks not only to inform you, but to remind herself, as if the act of naming the remedy makes it stronger. When the drink is ready, Edwin is coaxed to sit, his eyes dull but obedient. He swallows the bitter liquid in small sips, coughing between each one. Margaret presses the poultice to his chest, wrapping it snugly with cloth. The firelight dances across her hands as she works, her movements practiced and sure. You sit together in the dim glow, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and Edwin's uneven breathing. Margaret tells you to keep the air moist, to hang damp cloths near the hearth, so the dryness of the winter does not make the cough worse. You obey, dipping strips of cloth into the warm water and draping them on the backs of chairs. Outside, the wind has risen, rattling the shutters, but inside the small space feels closer, the walls holding in both the warmth and the quiet whirring that lingers between you and Margaret. She begins to tell a story, one from her youth, about the winter her own brother fell ill. It was a way, she says, of learning that care is not just in the herbs or the poultices, but in the hours spent watching, tending, being present. The hours stretch on, marked by the slow turning of the log in the fire. Every so often, Edwin stirs, coughing less violently now, the color returning faintly to his cheeks. Margaret nods at this, satisfied, but not yet willing to relax. She stays until the first grey light of dawn begins to seep in through the shutter cracks. Before she leaves, she places a small bundle of dried herbs in your hand. Steep these each evening, she says, and keep him warm. The rest is patience. Her eyes linger on yours for a moment, and then she is gone, swallowed by the pale morning light and the snow's muffled silence. You turn back to the hearth. Edwin sleeps now, his breath steady, the rise and fall of his chest a quiet reassurance. The fire burns low, and you add another log, the sparks leaping upward for a brief, bright moment before settling again. As you sit, the stillness of the hut returns, broken only by the sound of the wind outside. You think of how illness weaves itself into the rhythm of winter life, how each household has its own stories of recovery or loss, and how the knowledge of herbs and care passes down like an heirloom, as essential as bread or water. In the days that follow, Edwin grows stronger. The cough fades, his appetite returns, and by the week's end, he's able to help gather wood again. You walk together through the snow, the air cold, but the sun bright for the first time in days. Margaret passes by on her way to another home, offering you a small smile as she goes. The sickness has passed, but winter still holds the land in its pale grip. You know there will be more nights of worrying before the thaw, but for now, I agree with you, the memory of the fire's warmth, the scent of herbs in the air, and the quiet strength of hands that have healed countless winters before this one. By now the snow has settled into the rhythm of the land, a pale and silent blanket that hides the earth beneath. It has been here long enough that you no longer notice the first sting of cold when you step outside, though it still bites at your ears and nose with each gust of wind. The days are short, the nights long, and each hour seems to pass with the slow certainty of a season that knows it will not be hurried. But long before this stillness took hold, the work of preparing for it began. In truth, the deep winter is only survived by those who think of it even in the green days of summer. Every stick of wood you burn, every loaf of bread you slice, every rag you wrap around your hands now, was planned months before. You remember it clearly, the sound of the scythe in August, when the barley fields swayed golden under a restless breeze. The grain had to be harvested quickly, before storms could flatten it into the mud. Each stalk was cut by hand, bundled, and carried to the barns for threshing. The smell of it still lingers in memory, sweet and dry, clinging to the rough fabric of your tunic. That work filled the air with the dust of summer, but it was winter that was always in mind. The threshing floors were swept clean, and the grain separated from the chaff. Each sack was carried into storage, sealed against mice with wooden lids weighted by stones. There was no surplus in a peasant's life, only enough, if the gods were kind. And if they were not, you learned to stretch what you had, or you went without. The same foresight touched every part of life. In the last days of autumn, when the trees turned the color of flame, you gathered wood in great stacks beside the hut, birch for kindling, oak for the slow burn through the night. The gathering was heavy work, bending your back to the weight of logs and filling your arms with the smell of sap and leaf mold. By now those stacks have shrunk to half their size, and you measure each piece you take with a careful eye, knowing there are weeks yet to endure. Preserving food was another art of preparation. Cabbages were pulled from the earth before frost could split their leaves, stored in pits lined with straw and covered with soil to keep them from freezing. Carrots, turnips, and parsnips were buried in the same way, their tops twisted off, the smell of the earth still clinging to them. The meat, when there was any, came from the slaughter of animals that could not be kept through winter. A pig might be fattened all summer only to be salted, smoked, and hung from the rafters by November. The scent of smoke-cured meat still lingers in the air of your hut, a reminder of the feast that marked its slaughter and the many plain meals that would follow. Clothing, too, was part of this preparation. In the autumn evenings, when the sun set earlier each day, you sat by the hearth repairing the year's wear. Socks darned, tunics patched, cloaks lined with whatever fur or wool could be spared. The fabric was never new, it was the same cloth you had worn for years, softened by time, stiffened again by the cold. But in winter, every stitch was the difference between comfort and misery. And there was the roof, always the roof, thatched and bound tightly. It had to be inspected 4 leaks before the first snow fell. You remember climbing up, the thatch prickling your hands as you pressed new bundles into the gaps, the smell of dried reeds filling the air. A poor roof meant damp straw in the bed, and dampness in winter was the enemy of all. The work was not only for the body, but for the spirit. Winter can grind a person down, the sameness of the days pressing in like the snow on the eaves. So small comforts were gathered, too, a bundle of dried lavender to hang near the bed, the faint scent a reminder of warmer days, a small pouch of honey, saved for a feast day, to stir into ale or spread on bread when the cold seemed endless, a song remembered, ready to be sung in the long dark hours when voices were the only warmth in the room. Now, sitting by the hearth in the heart of winter, you can see how each piece of that work has carried you here. You break bread with the ease of someone who knows there is still enough left in the sack. You set another log on the fire and know there are still more in the stack. You wrap your patched cloak around your shoulders and feel the quiet satisfaction that it holds against the wind. Not every year is so steady. Some winters have been lean, when the harvest failed or the autumn storms came too soon. You remember the winter when a sickness struck the livestock and the salted meat ran out by mid-January. That was a season of broth made from cabbage water and the memory of better meals. Preparation is a kind of hope, but hope can only do so much when the land turns against you. Still, in a year like this one, when the stores hold and the firewood burns slow, there is a sense of balance. You know that each morning's meal is a debt paid by the months before, each warm night a gift earned by long hours of work under the summer sun. The cycle turns slowly, but it turns. You stand and cross to the corner where the sacks of grain rest. Running your hand over the rough burlap, you can feel the weight of it, both physical and symbolic. Enough grain to last until the first shoots of spring push through the thawed soil. Enough to keep the hunger at bay. Enough to remind you that the world, for all its harshness, still provides. A draft slips in under the door, carrying with it the faint sound of wind in the trees. You pull the cloak tighter and return to the fire, sitting close enough to feel the heat on your skin. The preparation for winter is not only about storing food and wood, it is about storing moments like this, small reservoirs of warmth and peace to draw on when the night feels longest. Tomorrow will bring more work. The firewood stack will need checking, the meat in the rafters examined for mold, the grain stirred to keep it from settling too tightly. These small acts, repeated each day, are what keep the deep winter from swallowing you whole. And when the snow finally begins to melt, when the first drops of water run from the eaves, and the ground softens underfoot, you will know that your labor has carried you through. The spring planting will begin, and the cycle will start again, but for now you sit in the glow of your hearth, knowing that the long road through the season has been made easier by every day you thought ahead. Winter has a way of pressing on the chest, of slowing the breath, of reminding you just how fragile life can be. The cold creeps into bones and lingers there, a patient shadow. And when sickness comes, as it often does in the coldest months, it comes quickly and without mercy. It begins with a cough in the night, muffled at first, then sharper, shaking the straw mattress and drawing you from the edge of sleep. You open your eyes to the faint red glow of the embers, the air heavy and still. The sound comes again, from the far corner where your neighbor, Edwin, has been staying these past days after his own hearth collapsed under the weight of snow. He is hunched beneath the wool blanket, his face pale even in the dim light, a sheen of sweat on his brow despite the chill. You rise quietly, feeling the bite of the cold on your bare feet, and move to the hearth. The fire needs feeding, so you take one of the larger logs from the stack, placing it carefully among the glowing coals. The flames catch slowly, licking at the wood, casting long shadows along the walls. Edwin stirs, his breath ragged. You know the signs your mother tended the sick in winters past, and you learned early how quickly a cough can turn to something worse. The hut's air is thick and close, carrying the faint, sour scent of illness. You pull on your cloak, the wool rough against your skin, and step out into the night. The snow crunches softly underfoot, the village silent, but for the distant moan of wind. You make your way to Margaret's hut. She's the village healer, a woman whose knowledge is as old as the hills themselves, passed from mother to daughter through generations. Her door is marked with dried herbs, bundles tied tight and hanging like small, withered charms against the cold. She answers your knock with a candle in hand, her face creased with sleep but alert. When you tell her of Edwin's cough, she nods without hesitation, setting the candle aside and wrapping herself in a thick shawl. From a low shelf, she takes a small wooden box, worn smooth from years of use, and tucks it under her arm. The walk back is slow, the snow deeper than before, the wind needling at your face. Inside your hut, Margaret wastes no time. She kneels beside Edwin, pressing the back of her hand to his forehead, then leaning close to listen to his breathing. Her eyes meet yours in a silent exchange. You both know it will be a long night. From her box, she takes dried leaves of coltsfoot, a small pouch of ground mustard seed, and a handful of thyme. She asks you to fetch water, and you step outside again, filling a clay jug with snow from the nearest drift. Back inside, the snow is set in a pot over the fire to melt, the steam carrying the sharp, green scent of the herbs as they are added. While the mixture simmers, Margaret prepares a poultice from mustard seed and coarse linen, explaining in her low, steady voice that the heat will draw the sickness from his chest. She speaks not only to inform you, but to remind herself, as if the act of naming the remedy makes it stronger. When the drink is ready, Edwin is coaxed to sit, his eyes dull but obedient. He swallows the bitter liquid in small sips, coughing between each one. Margaret presses the poultice to his chest, wrapping it snugly with cloth. The firelight dances across her hands as she works, her movements practiced and sure. You sit together in the dim glow, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and Edwin's uneven breathing. Margaret tells you to keep the air moist, to hang damp cloths near the hearth, so the dryness of the winter does not make the cough worse. You obey, dipping strips of cloth into the warm water and draping them on the backs of chairs. Outside, the wind has risen, rattling the shutters, but inside the small space feels closer, the walls holding in both the warmth and the quiet whirring that lingers between you and Margaret. She begins to tell a story, one from her youth, about the winter her own brother fell ill. It was a way, she says, of learning that care is not just in the herbs or the poultices, but in the hours spent watching, tending, being present. The hours stretch on, marked by the slow turning of the log in the fire. Every so often, Edwin stirs, coughing less violently now, the colour returning faintly to his cheeks. Margaret nods at this, satisfied, but not yet willing to relax. She stays until the first grey light of dawn begins to seep in through the shutter cracks. Before she leaves, she places a small bundle of dried herbs in your hand. Steep these each evening, she says, and keep him warm. The rest is patience. Her eyes linger on yours for a moment, and then she is gone, swallowed by the pale morning light and the snow's muffled silence. You turn back to the hearth. Edwin sleeps now, his breath steady, the rise and fall of his chest a quiet reassurance. The fire burns low, and you add another log, the sparks leaping upward for a brief, bright moment before settling again. As you sit, the stillness of the hut returns, broken only by the sound of the wind outside. You think of how illness weaves itself into the rhythm of winter life, how each household has its own stories of recovery or loss, and how the knowledge of herbs and care passes down like an heirloom, as essential as bread or water. In the days that follow, Edwin grows stronger. The cough fades, his appetite returns, and by the week's end, he's able to help gather wood again. You walk together through the snow, the air cold, but the sun bright for the first time in days. Margaret passes by on her way to another home, offering you a small smile as she goes. The sickness has passed, but winter still holds the land in its pale grip. You know there will be more nights of worrying before the thaw, but for now, agree with you, the memory of the fire's warmth, the scent of herbs in the air, and the quiet strength of hands that have healed countless winters before this one. It happens slowly, so slowly at first that you almost doubt it. One morning, you step outside and the air feels a little different. It is still cold, still sharp, but it carries a softness, a dampness that was not there before. The snow beneath your feet does not crunch as loudly. It gives way, heavy with water. The sun, though still pale and thin, seems to linger a little longer in the sky, as if reluctant to sink too soon. Inside the hut, you notice the changes too. The hearth fire, once a desperate necessity, now sometimes burns lower without anyone minding. The smoke drifts lazily rather than clinging to every surface. The family no longer huddles so tightly by the flames, spreading out as the air inside grows easier to breathe. Your body, still tired from the long season of scarcity, stirs with something you had almost forgotten: hope. The animals sense it before you do. The hens, who all but stopped laying during the darkest months, begin to leave their small gifts again, warm eggs tucked beneath straw. The goat's milk, once thin and reluctant, grows fuller with each passing week. Even the pigs, restless and loud, root at the thawing earth with an energy you had not seen since autumn. Their instincts know what yours are just beginning to suspect: the world is waking. The first true sign comes with the sound of water. For months, the streams were locked beneath ice, their music silenced. Now, you hear the faint trickle of melting snow, slipping down from the thatched roof, gathering in the ruts outside the door. Later, when you walk beyond the hut, you hear the stream itself, tentative at first, then stronger, as the frozen crust breaks and the water rushes free. The sound is brighter than bells, a promise that the earth is loosening its grip on winter. Food remains scarce, but the rhythm shifts. You still ration carefully, but the thought is easier when you know that soon the world will provide again. The children chew twigs of willow, both to pass the time and because the bark holds a faint sweetness. You gather the first wild herbs, sharp-tasting nettles and sorrel, boiling them into a thin green broth that tastes like nothing you have eaten for months. It is sour, almost harsh on the tongue, but it is alive, and that makes it precious. The village changes too. Doors open more often now, neighbors stepping outside to feel the sun on their faces. The air fills with the sound of chatter, cautious at first, then louder, more joyful. People compare notes on what food is left, what animals survived, how many hands are ready to work the soil again. There is talk of planting, of seed stores carefully protected all winter long. The energy is different now, no longer about enduring but about beginning. Clothing, worn and patched through the long cold, feels lighter when you set it aside at the day's end. You no longer sleep in every layer you own, no longer pull the blanket over your head to trap the warmth. The nights are still cold, yes, but not unbearable, not bone deep. You lie awake sometimes, listening to the dripping outside, the scurry of small animals returning, and the soft sighs of your family around you. The fear that haunted the darkest nights begins to fade, replaced by the quiet anticipation of what comes next. As the days stretch longer, work shifts from survival to preparation. You clear the ground of snow, breaking the crust to reveal the dark, damp earth beneath. The soil is heavy, clinging to your boots, but it smells rich, alive, full of the promise of crops yet to come. Every furrow you dig is a step away from hunger. Every seed you plant is so a reminder that the land will feed you again. Not all is easy, of course. The stores are still low, the hunger still sharp at times. Your body, weakened by months of small meals, struggles to match the renewed labor. Tools must be repaired, fences mended, roofs patched where the snow weighed too heavily. The work is endless, but it feels different now, no longer just enduring but building toward plenty. You mark the season not by calendars, but by the changes around you. The first bird call at dawn, high and piercing, reminding you of mornings long past. The sight of children running without heavy cloaks, their cheeks flushed with more than cold. The smell of damp earth rising as the sun warms the fields. Each detail is a thread in the tapestry of spring, woven slowly but unmistakably. There are traditions for this time, rituals passed down through generations. Some families bake the first loaf of bread from whatever flour remains, sharing it as a symbol of survival. Others light small fires at the edge of their fields, smoke drifting upward as an offering to encourage growth. In the church, bells ring louder, hymns of thanksgiving echoing against the still bare walls. Even if the hunger lingers, the spirit begins to feast. You yourself find moments of joy in the smallest things. The taste of fresh water from a stream, sharper now that the ice has broken. The sight of a child carrying the first wildflowers, tiny and fragile, but impossibly bright against the brown earth. The feel of the sun on your face, warm enough that you close your eyes and let it soak into your skin. For the first time in months, you feel not just alive but living. The memory of winter will not fade quickly. It clings to you, a reminder of what the cold can take, of the thin line between survival and loss. But it also gives shape to the relief you feel now, to the gratitude that rises with each sign of new life. Without the shadow of winter, the light of spring would not shine so brightly. As you sit one evening, watching the sky shift from grey to soft pink, you realize something simple you have endured through the hunger, the cold, the storms, the endless nights you have endured. And now, as the earth stretches and breathes again, you to stretch, you to breathe, ready to begin the cycle anew. The hardest season is behind you. Ahead lies work, yes, but also growth, warmth, abundance. The first shoots push through the soil, fragile yet unbreakable in their determination, and in them you see yourself rising from the long dark of winter, ready to face the year again. This is the rhythm of your life, the rhythm of every peasant who has walked these same fields, who has watched the world freeze and thaw, starve and feast, die and live again. It is not an easy life, but it is life, and it continues season after season, year after year. And tonight, as the last of the snow melts into the soil and the stars prick the sky above, you can finally rest in the knowledge that you have survived another winter. The change begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. You wake one morning, and the air smells different, softened, dampened, carrying a faint sweetness you have not breathed in months. Your bones are stiff from the long winter, but as you step outside, your boots sink into the softening earth. The ground no longer crunches beneath your weight. It gives way, pulling at your sawless, dragging mud along with each step. It is inconvenient, messy, and yet you cannot help but smile. The world is loosening its grip. Winter is beginning to release you. Snow lingers, of course, in patches along the fields, stubborn and pale. But even these remnants are shrinking, edged with mud and cut through by trickles of meltwater. For so long, the world was frozen, silent, unyielding. Now you hear it stirring, the drip from the eaves, the rush of water in ditches, the sharp crack as ice breaks across the pond. The sun rises higher than it has in months. Its light seems gentler, golden, carrying warmth that you almost remember. The days stretch a little longer, shadows retreat with reluctance, and the earth itself seems to breathe more easily. Neighbors notice too. Doors creak open, children stomp in puddles, laughing loudly after months of hushed play. Voices fill the lanes, once empty, now echoing with cautious joy. The thaw is a reminder that life can resume, that survival is no longer merely about enduring. There is much to repair. Roofs sag under winter's weight. Fences lean or have collapsed entirely. Tools are rusted, splintered, or broken. You and your neighbors labor through mud and cold, shoulders bent, hands blackened. The work is exhausting, but different from the monotony of winter survival. Each stroke of hammer, each stone lifted, each fence post reset is a movement forward, a preparation for the growing season ahead. The animals sense the change before you do. Goats bleat at doors, impatient to graze. Chickens scratch in the softening soil, clucking as they uncover worms and insects. Dogs romp through puddles, splashing water, joyous and unrestrained. Even the livestock seem lighter, freer, as though they understand the world is waking, and they are part of it. Mud is the constant companion of spring's arrival. Paths and lanes that were frozen hard now pull at boots and cart wheels. Your feet sink, your hands slip on wet posts. The village smells different to earthy, alive, pungent with decay and renewal. It is not pleasant, not clean, yet it signals that the world is stirring. You go to the stream one morning, carrying a bucket. You pause to listen. Water gurgles, rushes, flows with a life it had abandoned during the frozen months. Kneeling, you dip your hand into the cold, icy current, letting it run through your fingers. The taste of the water is sharp, sweet in its promise. You drink deeply, as though swallowing the thaw itself, and feel life pulse in your veins. Inside the cottage, change is subtle but profound. The fire no longer consumes wood endlessly. The hearth can be allowed to die down during daylight hours. The smoke clears faster, the air feels less suffocating. The walls seem wider, the rooms less oppressive, now that stepping outside does not mean facing the bite of frost. Hunger persists, gnawing at your belly, but the early shoots of spring bring hope. You nibble at bitter greens, boil nettles into thin soups, chew roots dug from the soft soil. It is not feasting, not abundance, but nourishment with promise. Every bite tastes of survival tipping into renewal. Evenings are different now. The village gathers not only for warmth, but for planning. Talk turns from enduring to preparing. Which fields will be ploughed first? Whose oxen survived? What seeds are stored? Stories and laughter return cautiously. Someone tells an old tale of foxes outwitting hunters, and the cottage echoes with chuckles long forgotten. The thaw is not gentle. Storms sweep through, dumping rain, turning paths into rivers, flooding unpatched huts. You patch roofs again, bail water, curse the mud that clings to boots and skirts. Your back aches, your hands blister, but you endure. The thaw is unrelenting, but it fights with you, not against you. One evening, after repairing a fence, you pause to breathe in the damp air. The sky is clear, stars sharp, moon bright. The wind carries no icy bite. It smells of soil, water, and life awakening beneath the surface. For the first time in months, you let yourself believe. Not just hope, but belief that spring is truly coming. The thaw teaches patience and resilience. Winter demanded stillness, entrance through stagnation. Now, entrance is forward-facing, a readiness for growth and renewal. Your body aches, your hands crack, your boots rot in the mud. Yet your spirit lives, buoyed by the gentle insistence of life returning. The thaw is messy, hard, sometimes cruel, yet it is beautiful in its persistence. It pulls you from survival into possibility. Each puddle, each stream, each muddy lane carries a quiet reminder. The world is alive again, and so are you. You step into the mud, let it cling to your boots, and smile. The thaw has arrived, and with it, the unspoken promise of growth, of work, of life that is no longer frozen in time. Winter has released its hold. The mud, the rain, the chores, they are no longer burdens, but part of the rhythm, part of the awakening. You lie awake that night on your straw mattress, listening to the drip from the eaves and the rustle of restless livestock. Your body is weary, but your mind feels lighter. The fire smolders low, the wind sighs through gaps in the walls. The world outside is stirring. You feel it deep in your bones. Life continues, survival is no longer enough, and soon, it will thrive. The thaw has arrived. The earth softens, the animals move, the water flows. And in its wet, messy, unpredictable way, it reminds you that spring is here, carrying the first seeds of hope, growth, and renewal. The thaw has broken winter's hold, and now a different rhythm begins. One morning, you wake to the sound of crows circling overhead, their calls echoing across the softening fields. The air carries a different weight now, not only damp with meltwater, but thick with the smell of turned soil, of earth waking after its long sleep. It is time to prepare the fields. The work begins slowly. You step outside, boots sinking into mud that clings stubbornly, each footstep heavier than the last. The ground is uneven, pocked with puddles that reflect the white sky above. Your breath forms less frost now, though the mornings are still bitter. A thin fog hovers over the meadows, dissolving as the sun climbs higher. You and your family walk the boundaries of your strip of land. The furrows that once held last year's grain are collapsed, pressed flat by snow, tangled with the remains of stalks gnawed by livestock, the desperate days of winter. Stones have shifted with the freeze and thaw, rising up out of the soil as if the earth itself has pushed them into your path. They must be cleared before anything can grow. You bend, lift, strain. Your fingers ache with cold as you toss stones into rough piles along the edge of the field. Children gather smaller ones, clattering them into baskets that rattle with each step. It is tiring work, slow and endless, but it carries a strange joy. Each stone removed feels like a small victory, a gesture of readiness. The oxen, thin from the long winter, are brought to the fields. Their ribs still show, but they strain willingly against the yoke, pulling the wooden plough through the mud. The plough creaks, wheels stuck often in soft ground. Your hands grip the handles, body leaning forward, guiding the blade as it cuts shallow furrows. Clods of wet earth turn over, rich and black, steaming faintly in the cool air. The smell of soil rises sharp and heavy, metallic, sweet, alive. It is the scent of possibility. The work is grueling. Mud sucks at your boots until your legs ache. Your back bends and straightens, muscles screaming. Sweat runs beneath your wool tunic, despite the chill in the air. Yet, with every furrow carved into the earth, the weight of winter slips further away. These lines in the soil are not just marks of labor, but promises, the first strokes of hope carved into the land itself. Neighbors work side by side, the boundaries between strips of land clear, but the effort shared. A man lends his oxen for half a day, In return, another sharpens his plough blade. Voices call across the fields, carrying encouragement, laughter, sometimes complaints. There is a shared urgency in the air. Everyone knows that what is planted now will determine whether the village thrives or starves come harvest. At midday, you pause for bread and thin ale, sitting on a fallen log at the edge of the field. The bread is hard, the ale sour, but the taste of it in the open air, with earth beneath your boots, and the smell of soil all around, is better than any winter meal by the hearth. You chew slowly, gazing across the land. Birds dart down into the freshly turned furrows, searching for worms. Life, you think, has truly returned. The tools themselves are precious. Your wooden plough has been patched more than once, iron blade reforged by the village smith after it cracked years ago. The hoe you carry has a handle smoothed by decades of use, passed down from your father. Every tool is cared for, mended, preserved. To lose one is no small matter. To break one now could spell disaster. So, each evening, after the day's work, you oil the wood, wipe the iron, set them carefully inside the cottage. As the days lengthen, the fields begin to take shape. Stones are cleared, furrows carved, tools sharpened, animals rested and worked in careful rhythm. The smell of damp soil and manure fills the village, clinging to your clothes, your hands, your hair. It is not unpleasant, it is the smell of survival, of work that promises reward. Before planting begins, there are rituals. The church bell calls the village together one evening, and the priest leads prayers for fertile soil, for gentle rains, for protection against pests and blight. Candles flicker in the cool air of the chapel, smoke curling upward as voices murmur in unison. Faith is woven into the soil as deeply as seeds will be. Without it, labor alone feels fragile, uncertain. Some villagers whisper their own charms into the fields. A woman scatters ashes at the corner of her strip, muttering words her mother once taught her. Another buries a scrap of bread at the edge of his furrow, offering food to the earth in exchange for plenty. You, too, find yourself muttering a quiet word as you press your hand into the soil, not entirely sure whether it is prayer, hope, or both. Children help as best they can, scattering manure across the furrows, their laughter rising as they chase one another between the lines of freshly turned earth. Their play seems out of place at first, yet somehow it belongs. For what are fields but the hope of feeding children, of letting laughter return each year? Evenings are filled with exhaustion. You return to the cottage with mud caked on your boots, soil embedded beneath your nails, muscles sore from endless bending. The hearth feels different now, not only a place of survival, but of rest earned through work that looks forward. You eat thin pottage, drink water from the rushing stream, and fall asleep listening to the sound of owls calling across the damp fields. But there are dangers still. The thaw has not been gentle, and heavy rains can ruin furrows overnight. One morning, you wake to find water poured across half the field, seeds washed away, days of labor undone. You trudge through the mud, shoulders sagging, heart heavy, and begin again, guiding the plough to carve new lines. Resilience is demanded, and you give it, because there is no other choice. The rhythm of preparation shapes the days. Wake, eat, work the fields, rest, repair tools, sleep. Each task may seem small, yet together they form the heartbeat of survival. You feel it in your body, aching but alive, moving in time with the earth itself. As you work, the world around you shifts. The hedgerows begin to bud, birds call more loudly each morning. Patches of green push through the mud, fragile but insistent. The air warms slowly, and you shed layers as you labor. The sun on your back a reminder that winter is truly gone. One evening, as you walk the boundary of your field, you pause to look at the furrows stretching in neat lines toward the horizon. They are simple, nothing more than carved earth, yet they hold the weight of your family's future. You breathe in deeply, filling your lungs with the smell of soil, damp and raw. It smells like work, like hunger, like hope. It smells like life itself. And so, day by day, stone by stone, furrow by furrow, you prepare the fields. The land is readying itself, and so are you. Soon, seeds will be sown. Soon, growth will begin. But for now, it is the preparation that matters, the clearing, the turning, the faith in soil and sweat alike. The fields lie waiting, dark and rich, promising. The earth has opened, and in its embrace, the future will be written. The earth is shifting now, and you can feel it as much as you see it. Winter's grip has loosened, not suddenly, but gradually, like a tired hand unclenching after too long a hold. What was grey and lifeless only weeks ago begins to breathe again, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Each morning greets you with new signs. The air is softer, not just damp and heavy with thaw, but edged with something warmer, a quiet promise. When you step outside, you smell it before you see it, the faint sweetness of grass stirring beneath the mud, the sharp green bite of buds splitting their casings. Birds fill the hedgerows now, their chatter rising earlier and lingering longer, songs threading across the fields like ribbons. And there, in the paddock, the first lambs. Their bleating is high-pitched and insistent, fragile yet demanding. You watch as they wobble unsteadily on legs too thin for their small bodies, nudging at their mother's sides for milk. The sheep's wool is tangled and matted from winter, but their eyes hold a watchful calm. Each new lamb feels like a victory, a whisper of abundance after months where even survival seemed uncertain. Children gather at the fence, laughing at the sight of the lamb's clumsy leaps. For a moment, the memory of hunger fades, replaced by pure delight. Calves follow soon after. Their births are more laborious, the animals larger, the work heavier. But when the first calf stands, slick and trembling, the whole village exhales as if it, too, has been reborn. Livestock is wealth, more precious than coins in a chest. Each new life is both security and hope, a buffer against the unpredictable months ahead. The fields, once raw and empty, begin to change. Seeds have been sown, scattered into the furrows you carved with aching muscles and patient toil. Days stretch longer, sunlight warming the soil just enough to stir growth. At first, it seems impossible that anything will come of those tiny grains pressed beneath the earth. But then, one morning, you notice a shimmer of green, delicate shoots poking through the soil in even lines, almost glowing against the dark earth. Your chest swells at the sight. They are fragile, yes, and vulnerable to pests, to rain, to chance, but they are alive. You kneel, brushing a finger along one of the tiny shoots, the leaf bending beneath your touch. It feels like holding the future in your hand. The village changes with the season, too. Where winter pressed everyone inward, huddled by hearths, now people spill outdoors. Repairs are made to roofs that leaked during storms. Fences are patched, pathways cleared of mud. Children, who spent long months restless in cramped cottages, now run barefoot through meadows, their laughter carrying over the fields. Women hang laundry on lines strung between trees, the cloth snapping in the wind, smelling of soap and spring air. You hear music again. A fiddler plays at the edge of the green one evening, the tune rough but cheerful, and voices join in. There is dancing, stomping in boots worn thin, skirts swaying, faces lit by firelight. The joy feels almost reckless after the silence of winter, but no one holds back. Life is short, uncertain, and when the season turns in your favor, you celebrate. The meals shift as well. Pottage still fills the pot most nights, but now you add handfuls of early greens, nettles gathered from the hedgerow, wild garlic with its sharp, bright flavor. Fresh milk returns to the table, rich and thick, a taste you nearly forgot. Eggs appear again, small treasures gathered carefully each morning. After months of monotony, each bite feels like a feast. The streams run fast and clear now, no longer clogged with ice. Children splash in them, shrieking with delight at the cold water. Women kneel on the banks, scrubbing clothes, their voices rising in song as they work. The sound of water itself is a comfort, a reminder that the land is alive, that life flows forward. There is work still, endless work. Weeding begins as soon as green shoots push high enough to compete with wild growth. It is slow, back-breaking, fingers sore from pulling, knees wet from kneeling in mud, but even in the monotony, there is satisfaction. Each weed removed is a chance for the crop to thrive. Each row cleared another step toward security. You take moments to pause, though, more often now than in winter. Standing at the edge of the field, you watch the sun sink behind the trees, casting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Birds settle into their nests, their calls softening into evening quiet. You lean against the wooden fence, mud drying on your boots, muscles aching, and breathe deeply. The air smells of grass, of damp soil, of life unfurling. It is not comfort in the way of warm hearths or full bellies, but it is peace, and for now, that is enough. The priest speaks often of renewal. His sermons are filled with words of gratitude, of cycles, of the Lord's hand guiding seed to sprout. Villagers nod, murmur prayers, make the sign of the cross. Whether faith lies in heaven or soil, in scripture or sweat, no one doubts that this is a holy time. Life has returned, and with it, hope. But beneath the hope is memory. You remember the nights of cold, so sharp it stole the breath from your chest. You remember meals stretched thin, bellies grumbling in the dark. You remember the silence of fields buried under snow. These memories linger like shadows, reminding you how close the line is between survival and loss. Perhaps that is why joy feels so sharp now, so vivid. You do not take it for granted, not for a moment. Each blade of grass, each bleat of a lamb, each bite of fresh milk and greens feels precious, irreplaceable. You hold these small gifts close, savoring them with a kind of reverence. The village itself feels lighter, faces are brighter, voices louder, steps quicker. There is laughter in the air, mingling with birdsong, with the lowing of cattle, with the creak of plows and the rush of streams. Winter has not been forgotten, but it has been survived. That, in itself, is a cause for celebration. One evening, you sit outside your cottage, the day's work behind you, and watch as fireflies begin to flicker across the field. Their glow is faint, pulsing gently in the gathering dusk. You feel the earth humming beneath you, alive, awake, generous once more. You close your eyes, listening the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the call of an owl from the forest, the faint laughter of neighbors across the green. Your body is tired, yes, but it is a good tired, a tired that comes from building, from preparing, from living. Winter tested you, pressed you down with its weight, but spring has lifted you again. You survived, and now life returns in abundance. The fields are green, the animals thrive, the village hums with work and joy alike. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs with the scent of spring, and let it out slowly. For tonight, you are not worried about tomorrow. Tonight, you are simply here, alive, surrounded by the quiet miracle of return. The land has opened its arms again, and within them, you find peace. The season has turned at last, and so, too, has your spirit. Where once you huddled by a smoky hearth, listening to the wind batter your cottage walls, now you walk through meadows that glow with new growth. The harshness of winter has not vanished from memory, its weight lingers. Its lessons remain, but the world feels softer, brighter, full of possibility. Each day stretches longer, sunlight spilling across the village green, across the tilled fields, across the slow-moving stream that sparkles, now instead of freezing. The sound of flowing water is a comfort, a gentle reassurance that time itself is moving forward, carrying you with it. You look around and see how life has changed in just a few short weeks. The animals you depend on grow stronger, coats glossy, bellies full. Lambs leap awkwardly in their pens, chasing one another in dizzy circles. Calves nuzzle at their mothers, steady on their legs now, heads tossing with playful energy. Even the chickens, silent for so long, cluck contentedly as they scratch at the soil, offering their eggs once again. In the fields, green shoots rise higher each day. They are fragile still, vulnerable to frost, to pests, to chance. But for now, they stand, bright and insistent, each one a small miracle. You tend them carefully, weeding, watering, watching, your heart lifting a little more with every row. To see life emerge from the earth after months of barren silence, it feels like watching hope take form. The people around you carry themselves differently, too. Shoulders no longer slumped in defeat, faces no longer drawn with hunger. There is still work, endless work, but it is lighter now, buoyed by the season. You hear laughter spill from cottages as neighbors gather in the evenings. You hear music on the air, fiddles and pipes, voices raised in song. The weight of winter has been shed, like a heavy cloak shrug from weary shoulders. One afternoon, you join others on the green. The sun is warm, the ground dry beneath your boots. Someone has brought out a drum, its beat steady and low, and children begin to dance in the circle of adults. Their feet kick up dust, their arms fling wide, their giggles contagious. Before long, more join in, skirts swaying, boots stomping, the rhythm weaving through the crowd like fire through dry grass. You find yourself moving, too, hesitant at first, then freer, the music pulling you forward. For a brief time, it feels as though winter never was, as though life has always been like this, bright, joyful, unburdened. As evening falls, the dancing quiets, fires are lit, casting orange light across smiling faces. You sit at the edge of the crowd, warmth on your skin, the smell of smoke and roasting meat in the air. A neighbor passes you a cup of ale, its taste sharp, earthy, welcome. Around you, voices murmur, laughter rises, children doze in their parents' arms. You lean back, gazing at the stars pricking the sky, and feel something rare, something precious, contentment. Yet even in contentment, memory persists. Winter's trials are not forgotten. They are carried with you, etched into bone and spirit. You remember the hunger, the endless cold, the long nights of doubt. You remember the stillness of snow-covered fields, the silence of forests stripped bare. But remembering does not feel heavy now. Instead, it deepens your appreciation for the present, for the warmth of the fire, the fullness of your stomach, the laughter in your ears. It is in contrast that joy is sharpest. And so, when you rise tomorrow to weed the fields again, to mend fences, to carry water, you will do so not with dread, but with quiet gratitude. These tasks are hard, but they are life, and life is enough. The seasons will turn again, as they always do. Winter will come back, with its trials, its merciless tests. But you are not afraid of it now. You know what it demands, and you know you can endure. The memory of this spring, its light, its laughter, its renewal will carry you when the dark months return. You look around one last time before retreating into your cottage. The fields, glowing faintly in the moonlight, the livestock settling into sleep, the faint hum of insects in the hedgerows. The village quiet now, peaceful, safe. You breathe in deeply, filling your lungs with cool night air. Then let it out slowly. In this moment, there is no rush. The world moves at its own pace, and you move with it. You have survived the harshest winter, and you stand now on the threshold of abundance. Tomorrow will bring work, yes, but it will also bring growth, laughter, and life. You step inside, the door creaking softly behind you. The fire glows low in the hearth, casting shadows across the familiar walls. You settle onto your straw mattress, rough but warm beneath your blanket. The sounds of night filter in, an owl calling, the rustle of leaves, the faint bleat of a lamb in the distance. Your eyelids grow heavy, your body easing into rest. And as you drift, you know this, you are part of something enduring. The land, the village, the cycle of seasons, it all continues, with or without you, but tonight, it carries you with it. You are woven into its fabric, held by it, sustained by it. You have lived through hunger, through cold, through darkness, and now you live through renewal, through warmth, through light. The wheel turns, and you turn with it. So rest now. The work is done for today. Tomorrow will come, as it always does, bringing its own labors and its own small joys. But tonight, you are safe. Tonight, you are alive. Tonight, you are home. And before we close, I want to thank you for sharing this journey with me, walking in the shoes of a medieval peasant, surviving the bitter winter, and greeting the spring. If you've enjoyed this story, please consider leaving a like, or dropping a comment to let me know where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. And of course, if you'd like more journeys like this one, feel free to subscribe. It truly helps me know that these quiet stories are bringing comfort to someone, somewhere. Now, I'll leave you with a simple wish. May your own night be peaceful, your dreams gentle, and your rest deep. Thank you for being here.